Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum, and you're watching the Theo Nightly video for the 22nd of October here in 2020. It's still earnings. We still don't have a stimulus deal, and we're kind of back to where we started with the broader market, despite tech being weak and financials being stronger today, but we'll come to that later. First, we'll talk about Intel and AMD and some other stocks that had earnings today. Mainly, Intel missed earnings. Well, depends on what you think of and sort of how to interpret it. But nonetheless, right now, what you're looking at on the right side of the screen is Intel after hours. And it closed the session around $54 per share. At the time of this video, we're down to $48.50 or $49, which puts it right about here. So Intel shares have gapped down not to new lows of 2020, but to new swing lows not seen since July and not that far away from the lows hit in March during the COVID pandemic. At the same time this earnings is happening, on the flip side of Intel, AMD, Advanced Microprocessors, not necessarily earnings right now, but it's getting a boost because its competitor went down. So AMD has a 75, 78, 79 per share support level, and we're seeing it up to 82, which is there, not much. This is a 1 minute chart. These little shaded areas are the after hours prints. And of course, what's happening here is on the daily chart. And this one continues an uptrend. So that is Intel. And just to let you know, to reference on our fundamentals, if you're ever curious about any stock you're interested in, on the Thinkorswim Analyze tab, we can take a look at Intel. We can see exactly what that corporation is, what their research team, and some of the recommended buys or sells, what it does, where it's headquartered, earnings, and some information on fundamentals. That's there for you if you're curious about what a stock does, if it comes up in a scan or something. But Intel, if you ever want to dive deeper into the fundamentals, it's here. There's another tool right here at the earnings tab. So Intel has had a history of beating the Wall Street forecast. Didn't quite happen here. Came in line with expectations, but that's the way that the earnings tend to go. A market can beat or exceed, or I should say exceed or meet. They can meet earnings expectations, but if their quarterly revenue or their forecast about the future isn't as bullish as the street thinks, you can have the stock go down. So Don is frequently telling us, even if they give you the numbers about what the earnings per share is going to be, you cannot predict or forecast what the market's going to do. And earnings becomes an option type of game or a butterfly or some other way to hedge your positions. And again, option expected moves or earnings type of expected moves, those give you advantages or straddles and at the money straddles and of course other components. But know that trading earnings is a whole separate ball game. And for trading just regularly, it might be best to punt your position until earnings have been announced and then play back into the normalized tape. And you can always do that with days till earnings. Intel being one of the main stocks in today's session. Just going through, we had Union Pacific, and that reported earnings at or before the opening bell. And that's been on the way down. So Union Pacific Railway, down from $2.10 per share, it's making a new swing low, not since August. And again, the earnings were here. You can always take a look at them. $2.01 per share. Also, don't forget news. You can do a news widget here on the left side of the Thinkorswim program and really delve into what the earnings numbers are if that is of interest to you. I tend to focus on the part of the charts, price levels, and any type of trade management or position management that might need to be done or avoided or at this point put on. Now the earnings are behind us. In AT&T, that was a stock we saw discussed a lot in our chat room this morning, but it had strong, it's always tough to say strong earnings. The earnings were there, and AT&T shares busted a downtrend. So that's down at new 2020 lows, 27 per share. And we had a trend day to the upside before the market opened and into today's session. That wound up being a trend day all day long. That was AT&T. Coca-Cola. These were earnings before the market opened, and you can see how that played out in today's session as well. Dow Chemical, earnings before. And mainly if something is uptrending with higher highs, higher lows, we try to play in the direction of the trend with pullbacks or tracements or buying into support, flag trades, bull flag trades. Danaher, this has been one of our stocks that comes up on our 52-week high list. Stocks making new 52-week highs tend to continue because that's a sign of strength. And we can look at that just in a minute. But nevertheless, it did have earnings. I don't delve deeply into earnings, but again, that's there. The report was $1.70, looks like 2 per share, and that created a trend day to the upside. But that trend day was in the direction of the underlying trend with higher highs and higher lows. And that brings us back to Intel and then Capital One Financial. If it has a 0.5 in the scan list, days till earnings, and I just scanned the S&P 500 or 100, you can broaden this to the S&P 100 or look inside the NASDAQ or other equity products. I just prefer to do my trades and my analysis into a smaller world with bigger stocks, and that's the S&P 100. You can stay in the NASDAQ as well, or the Russell. Now that Dow Jones, if you're ever curious, is going to be 30 stocks. That's a little too small of a universe to trade, but we want to limit our opportunities. That way we're not overwhelmed. To me, that answers the S&P 100 list and just scans and intraday and short-term trades. But Capital One Financial is going to be a little higher, and that continues the bullish move. American Express will report tomorrow. It has a 1. That means it will report tomorrow before the bell, and that is on Friday. And we're going to get some more earnings next week. Those include Eli Lilly, Caterpillar, Triple M, and Pfizer, Raytheon, and down the list. And Microsoft, there you go. Microsoft reports Monday after the bell. So that's the main type of view on a stock perspective. I promised I'd talk about stocks making new 52-week highs in the S&P 500. So we'll broaden our scan. And these are candidates to buy pullbacks or tracements or flags, or just to be on your watch list. So I'm going to pull these over here so I can easily get them in the chat into the window. Just going down the list, we have Gap Retail, Freeport McMoran. It's a copper thing. We keep seeing that come up on our list. Strong stock continues to get even stronger. And I won't go through them all, but just the ones you see. Thermo Fisher keeps showing up. There's Estee Lauder, Zebra, fun stock, and some others as well. Maybe not a whole lot. Whirlpool, and of course Danaher. So those are the key names. And again, the concept for even looking at a scan like this, very simple scan to show me that which is strong. And the expectation is that strong stocks now tend to get stronger in the future. So we'll take a look at just some of the names we saw earlier. There's Gap, Gap Store, which is a retail name, making a new 52-week high. Freeport McMoran, Copper, and that one continues its uptrend. Get those pullbacks. CSX, which is a transportation type of stock, and Danaher. We saw that one earlier. Whirlpool. And what I like to joke is Thermo Fisher, but I call it thermonuclear war. Back to a reference to War Games, the movie from the 80s. But TMO, Thermo Fisher Scientific. So these are stocks strong, getting stronger. The broader picture will conclude with that. We still have headline risk. Stimulus on. We have optimism the stimulus will be done. Stimulus off. Oh, we're not quite there yet. I don't mean to be the cynic, but I don't think there's going to be a stimulus deal, but that is my opinion. That doesn't have any sway on the market itself. We are still playing into this headline tape on the short-term time frame, and that has kept us, we'll see this on a 5-minute chart. We'll actually go to a 15-minute chart right there. And this is where we are and have been this entire week, playing bullishly off of 3420, 3430, but not getting anywhere. And in fact, if you've noticed, most of the days, yesterday, today, and the day before, had intraday movement both directions on the stimulus on, stimulus off, going to happen, not going to happen. And we ended the session more than not right where we started. Key points about today was that financials were stronger and technology was weaker. The strongest was energy. And that played into today's session. Always be careful, always be safe. We are still waiting on the yes or no with the stimulus. If it happens, very, very bullish. If it does not happen, very, very bearish. And of course, that election coming up in less than 2 weeks. Volatility is still in play. Be careful, be safe. This is Corey Rosenblum with tonight's Theo update for October 22nd, 2020.